The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 341. Yvonne was still wearing thick clothes, but her face had much more color than before. When Yvonne saw Snow, her cheeks flushed pink. She was disappointed to see that Kiran was not with her. Snow could read her face. She smiled calmly and asked, "Are you here for Kiran?" Yvonne nodded. "Yes. Is he here?" Snow shook her head. "He got up early and went out, so I don't know where he went." "Come in!" Yvonne had mixed feelings. Snow picked her words wisely. Not only did she answer her question, but she also revealed little details about her life, that she knew Kiran left early because they had slept together. They were a married couple anyway, but picturing Kiran and Snow together made her feel a sense of loss for some reason. In the end, she still went in. Snow poured a cup of coffee for Yvonne. "I'll call Kiran right now." After dialing Kiran's number, she put it on speaker. Kiran picked up after a single ring and asked teasingly, "Honey, we just split up a while ago. Do you miss me already?" "Shut up, stop with the nonsense." Snow scolded Kiran for teasing her and said, "Yvonne's here looking for you." The conversation between the two of them was so affectionate. Yvonne could feel her heart boiling, knowing she had no chance with Kiran. She laughed at herself for having such hopes. In Kiran's eyes, the Quinn family deserved to die. The reason she was working so hard was just to save the lives of the Quinn family. Who was she to have feelings for him when she was begging him for mercy? Yvonne comforted herself and calmed down. "Tell her to wait. I'm on my way back," Kiran responded without much thought. Snow saw Yvonne's awkward expression, so she pretended to be jealous. "Did I hear the car accelerate when I mentioned Yvonne was here? Get the company's laboratory ready. I need to use it later." Kiran swiftly changed the topic. Snow was secretly blaming him for not falling for her trick. "All right, we'll talk when you get back." After hanging up, she looked at Yvonne's rosy cheeks. She was shocked at how beautiful she looked even though she was sick. What man would not be tempted by such a woman? How could Kiran not fall for her? Snow doubted that. Yvonne could feel Snow's gaze on her, so she quickly explained. "I'm just Kiran's part-time worker. I have to establish a company to compete with Blooming Group, so I came to ask him what I should do next." Yvonne only told her half the truth. The other reason she came all of a sudden was to see the relationship between Kiran and Snow. She was disappointed. She did not think they would be glued to each other. "I don't know what's going on in that guy's head. He asked me to stay at home all day every day, but I couldn't take it any longer, so I came here." Snow did not try to expose Yvonne, but she just talked about her current situation without leaving out the part about Kiran's love for her. Yvonne nodded without saying anything. 10 minutes later, Kiran walked in with a bag and 2 strands of hair. When the girls saw him, they were surprised. "I'm going to the laboratory now," Kiran said to Snow. Snow nodded. In the next second, she looked at him in surprise and asked, "Can you do the experiments? Do you need me to find a researcher to do the tests for you?" Kiran shook his head. "No, thank you." Snow nodded and took him to the laboratory. Since Yvonne had nothing else to do, she followed them too. However, she was disappointed to see Kiran ignoring her. He did not say a word to her and did not even look at her. When Kiran got to the laboratory and saw the clean apparatus and environment, he was satisfied with Snow's organization. He walked up to a piece of testing equipment and turned it on. Slap! Snow put her hands on top of his and said, "Don't touch this! This machine costs $1 million. Kiran smiled. "How many can you buy if I gave you $100 million? How would it be the same? This thing is like a part of me, and you can cut off a piece of my flesh." Snow got angry on purpose. "According to your analogy, isn't pregnancy the same? You gain something that's like a part of you, then you lose it." Kiran teased. "Nonsense!" Snow thought about how she and Kiran would sleep together any time now, so she turned red and hit him. They laughed and teased each other as if Yvonne were not there. Kiran started the machine, and after briefly reading the instruction manual, he placed Zachary's hair into it. The 2 women looked at Kiran curiously, wondering what he was trying to do. In the end, a set of data was printed out, but no one quite understood it. Kiran tested his own hair, but the data was different. "Test mine." Snow plucked out a hair and gave it to Kiran. Kiran tested it, and the result was basically the same as Kiran's. Kiran was slightly taken aback to see the 3 sets of data. Then he told Yvonne, "Give me a strand of your hair too." "Huh?" Yvonne had been distracted the entire time, so she was startled when Kiran suddenly spoke to her. By then, Kiran had already plucked her hair and put it in. The results came out, and Kiran was surprised that her results shared similarities with Zachary's. Snow noticed too. They were puzzled. Yvonne looked at the results and then at Kiran while blushing. She said, "Whose hair is this?" "Zachary Simmons," Kiran said. I have nothing to do with him. My mother definitely has nothing to do with him. Yvonne thought that it was a genetic test, so she quickly explained to clear the misunderstanding. Peft. Kiran laughed. It's not a paternity test. Yvonne blushed in embarrassment. Then Kiran looked at Yvonne seriously. Have you ever been to Dragonsmount, huh? Yvonne looked at Kiran in surprise and asked, How did you know? Snow also looked at Kiran questioningly. Zachary goes to Dragonsmount every year. I suspected something unusual about him, so I brought his hair back for testing. Kiran paused and looked at Snow. The compositions of our hair are different from his because we've never been there, but Yvonne's is the same. I go there to fast for a month every year. Yvonne blushed and lowered her head. Snow's eyes were wide open. She did not expect her to say that. Kiran was shocked, but he felt touched. Chapter 342. The Quinn family owes the York family an apology. I'm willing to pay for our sins, Yvonne explained while her face turned red. In a few words, she conveyed her sincere feelings and showed how pure her heart was. Kiran and Snow were both deeply touched. How could you go in there in your current state? Kiran looked at Yvonne in surprise. He was still in disbelief. Yvonne nodded while blushing. Kiran was secretly over the moon. How is it like inside Dragonsmount? Yvonne went pale. She looked at Kiran and said, I've only been to the edge of the cave's entrance on top of Dragonsmount. I dared not go in. Weren't you scared of wild beasts? Snow asked. I don't know what's wrong with the cave, but there are a lot of skeletons near the entrance, both animal and human bones. Yvonne talked about it fearfully. Her face was white as paper. Kiran was reminded of Zachary's words. Everyone who followed him died. Why didn't anything happen to you? Yvonne shook her head in surprise. I don't know. I was ill, so I didn't care whether I died or not. I was not afraid of the bones, nor was I afraid to go near the cave, but the cave was vertically deep. I was too afraid to go in because I couldn't see the bottom. A vertically deep hole? Kiran was surprised. If that was the case, how did Marshall get down there? How did he do the research? Yvonne nodded affirmatively. It's a very deep hole, so I can't get in. Kiran frowned, wondering whether he should show Yvonne Zachary's reports. What is it? Snow asked Kiran. We'll talk about it back in the office. Kiran put the machine away. When they returned to the office, Kiran walked over to the bag. Dragonsmount research reports? Both women exclaimed. Kiran said with a serious expression, This is how the Simmons family gets a large sum of money from Power Hub Investment Group for development every year. That's how the Simmons family developed their business? They were shocked. Kiran was a miracle in their eyes. Kiran did not explain much, and he glanced at Yvonne. Yvonne understood and said while blushing, I'm just a part-timer. I won't tell anyone. Thank you. Kiran was cold toward Yvonne, but he was sincerely grateful. Snow picked up a report and saw a photo inside. That picture is real, Yvonne pointed at the picture. Kiran looked and saw bones at the entrance of the cave. The white skeletons were terrifying. Even a man like him got goosebumps just by looking at it. He was truly moved that Yvonne fasted all this while for the York family. You stay here for a whole month at a time? Kiran pointed at the picture. Yvonne nodded. How foolish of you, Kiran said, suppressing his emotions. Yvonne's cheeks went red. She was filled with complex emotions when she realized Kiran cared about her. Looking back at it now, it was indeed scary. There were wild beasts and bones of so many dead people. If she died, would she have turned into one of the skeletons? However, Kiran's words made it all worth it. Take a look and tell me what you think based on what you saw. Kiran handed her last year's report. Yvonne took it and started reading. Kiran looked at the first report that was made 15 years ago. The report was already turning yellow as it was printed long ago. Some of the pictures inside had begun to fade. Kiran looked through the pictures. The dragon seemed to be just a baby. It was tiny compared to what it looked like now. Kiran began to flip through the contents. The first section was just basic reports and an overview of Dragonsmount. There did not seem to be much difference compared to the latest reports. He continued to read the second section, which contained various statistics about Dragonsmount. He frowned when he realized there were hidden gold and jade mines in Dragonsmount. Were these mineral resources the reason Dragonsmount became so popular? Just as Kiran was about to get to the third section, Yvonne suddenly gasped. Kiran and Snow looked over and said, What is it? Look, Yvonne pointed. The two of them rushed over and saw that there was a set of pictures. In the picture was a golden snake as thick as the mouth of a bowl, circling the cave entrance before crawling in. Kiran could not help but shudder at the sight of the snake. He would have been on his toes if he encountered a snake like that. Was Zachary not afraid? He looked up at Yvonne and asked, Have you seen it before? Yvonne shook her head. If I saw such a snake, I would probably be scared to death. Kiran agreed. Who would not be scared of such a huge snake? He was puzzled. He gently knocked on the table. Dragonsmount was getting even more mysterious. Why do some people die and some do not? By the way, why did you test my hair just now? Yvonne asked Kiran curiously. I did it to prove that you have stayed in Dragonsmount before and have traces of Dragonsmount on you. That's all I could find out. Yvonne looked disappointed. Then the office door swung open, and a fragrant waft of air came in. Kiran, are you being all lovey-dovey with your wife again? Serena's bitter voice came from the door. She walked in with a fitting black skirt, black stockings, and stiletto heels. When she saw Yvonne here, she ignored what she said earlier and teased. Kiran, if you're here with 2 women, why don't you add me to the list? Yvonne's face turned red from embarrassment. Kiran was speechless. That woman had such a dirty mind. What else did she know other than sex? Snow glared at Serena. Let's talk business. What business? Are we discussing who's going to be Kiran's second woman? Serena said while walking over. However, the picture of the snake quickly caught her attention. She exclaimed, Why is the School of Medicine's golden dragon here? Wait, no, that's a stupid little snake. Serena quickly changed her words. You recognize it? Kiran quickly asked. Isn't this the golden dragon the School of Medicine nurtures and worships? Serena said when she saw Kiran's serious face. Golden dragon? Yvonne said. Call Frank. He'll know. Serena did not want to waste her breath. Dragonsmount was getting even more interesting to Kiran. He immediately called Frank, asking him to come to the office. In less than 3 minutes, Frank arrived. Before Kiran could speak, Serena was already pointing at the picture, shouting, Come look at this damn snake! Frank was stunned. Why is the School of Medicine's golden dragon here? Chapter 343. Kiran looked at Frank and asked, Is this really the School of Medicine's golden dragon? Frank nodded with a happy yet curious expression. Yes, I was in charge of feeding it when I was a child. I fed it well, but it went missing 15 years ago. Where is it? Dragonsmount, Kiran responded with a frown. Why did it go all the way to Dragonsmount? Frank frowned too. Kiran's eyes narrowed. His face became solemn as he looked toward Yvonne. You'll follow me to Dragonsmount. Me? Yvonne was surprised, but her face soon filled with joy. Snow looked disappointed. Kiran entrusted Lilian to protect him, and now he was going to Dragonsmount with Yvonne. Perhaps I'm guessing that those who died were bitten by the snake. Kiran paused and continued. The healing prince treated you before, and you took a lot of medicine from them too. That's why the snake didn't attack you. If that's the case, what about Zachary? Yvonne asked calmly. Kiran smirked when he remembered that Quentin solved the blooming cream problem. After his analysis, not only were they at odds with each other, but it seemed both parties had much in common too. How interesting. However, Kiran did not tell them his thoughts. Mr. Kiran, can I go? Frank looked grave and sorrowful. My master raised the golden dragon. He had been looking for it for many years. He even thought about it during his last breath. If possible, I'd like to bring it back. Frank's loyalty moved Kiran. We'll go in 3 days. If your injuries are healed, I'll take you with me. Thank you, Mr. Kiran, Frank said gratefully. Kiran nodded. They studied the reports together to learn as much as possible about Dragonsmount, but they were disappointed to find out that most of the reports were about the mineral deposits. Of course, how could he forget the red dragon? Kiran finally finished reading the reports, and he fell into deep thought. He was not surprised to find out that there were mineral deposits in Dragonsmount, but it was unreasonable for Power Hub to give him so much money for that. It was even more interesting that only Zachary survived in Dragonsmount. It seems that Dragonsmount did not only have its secrets, but there were lies involved, too. He looked forward to going to Dragonsmount to find what other secrets were. He wanted to get to the bottom of it. When they dispersed, Kiran asked Yvonne to postpone the production of the cosmetic products temporarily so she could prepare to leave for Dragonsmount. Kiran decided to take Yvonne and Frank to Dragonsmount with him to find more secrets. Kiran sent Serena away because he could not stand her. He just wanted to stay away from her. Thus, Kiran and Snow were the only ones left. Snow looked at Kiran and said, Did you go see Lilian today? Kiran nodded. I did. Was it a yes? Snow hoped that Kiran would say no so that she could be with Kiran. Yes. Snow nodded in disappointment, but there was one condition. Kiran looked at Snow and smiled. What condition? Snow quickly asked. Kiran smiled without answering her. Snow was impatient to know. There was no way he agreed to the engagement, right? She was dying to know now. Tell me now! Kiran continued smiling without saying a word. Snow was anxious, so she asked bluntly, Did she ask you to fulfill the engagement with her? Pfeft! Kiran laughed at how cute his wife was. My wife is so cute when she's angry. Snow knew that Kiran was messing with her. She was so furious that she wanted to lash out at him. Kiran took her hand and said, "How could I say yes to that?" Snow was happy to hear that, but she said arrogantly, "How would I know if you would?" "I have a question," Kiran said thoughtfully. "What is it?" Snow quickly asked. "How many times can a woman give birth?" Kiran scratched his head like he was seriously pondering. "What do you— Fuck you!" Snow realized Kiran was trying to make her give birth to more children. She was so mad that she wanted to beat him to death. "Ha ha!" Kiran laughed and ran to the harp. He found the third and fourth pieces of the joyful odyssey that Lilian gave him and started practicing. Snow reckoned that Lilian was the one who asked him to practice the joyful odyssey, so she got angry. She rolled her eyes at him and said, "It seems like the power of love is so strong that it made you so hard working." Kiran turned to look at Snow and said, "If you're jealous, you can come over and practice with me. I'll teach you." Snow wanted to, but her ego got the best of her. She curled her lips and said, "Who says I'm jealous? Why would I be jealous of you two?" "I'll practice alone then." Kiran concentrated on playing the harp. Snow was going to ignore Kiran's playing, but as soon as he started playing, Snow felt a surge of emotions. Her heart had an inexplicable longing, so she walked over to him. Kiran did not notice Snow as he was fully focused on practicing. The first level of the joyful odyssey was free love. The second level was dream. The third was innate love. And the fourth was letting go. Snow was immediately drawn to Kiran playing free love. Her affection for him was like a string pulling her toward him, and she rested her head on his shoulder. The second level, dream, made Snow burst into tears as she experienced what it felt like to lose Kiran. The pain, the loneliness, the helplessness, and the sense of loss about the future. The third level, innate love, filled Snow's heart with love again. She pictured a happy married life with Kiran, with their children around them. As he played the fourth level, letting go, Snow felt like she had lived through her entire life. Experiencing all the glory, darkness, and ups and downs, after Kiran was done playing, he stood up and saw Snow mesmerized by the music. Her eyelashes were soaked in tears, so he reached out to hold her in his arms. Snow woke up from her dream state and hugged Kiran. "Honey, I want to be with you forever." Kiran could feel Snow's love, and his heart was full. He hugged her tighter and said, "I want to be with you forever too." Snow was so touched that tears rolled down her face. They were tears of happiness. They silently embraced each other for a long time as they let their love roam free. Finally, Snow let go of him and said, "I want to learn." Kiran nodded and started teaching her. Meanwhile, Wendell and his people had completed the arrangements. They were ready to steal all the secret records of Dragonsmount from Schuyler Library. Chapter 344. The city started bustling as the lights turned on. Snow's fingers were sore and numb from all the playing, but she felt as if a force told her not to stop, so she persisted. Kiran stood beside her and kept her company. When she paused occasionally, he would gently massage her fingers to boost the blood circulation in her hands and reduce fatigue. Snow felt happy, so she played passionately. The two of them played happily, unaware they were angering Lilian. The harp she gave Kiran was part of a set with hers. When two people played together, they would create a harmonious effect that would generate a telepathic connection. She could feel Kiran's playing right now. At first, she was happy that Kiran was playing. She was happy to see that Kiran was obedient, but she felt something was off when Snow started playing. Even if Lilian could not see it, she could picture Kiran's careful guidance and affection towards Snow. There was an inexplicable feeling in her heart that felt suffocating. She recalled how Kiran bluntly broke off the engagement, saying he had no feelings for her. He even asked her to take care of Snow, which made her even angrier. Lilian could no longer calm herself. Practicing the joyful odyssey required her to be in a meditative state, and she had been working so hard over the years to reach this point. She had always been calm, but Kiran was disrupting her peace. Perhaps she was experiencing these emotions because, in her mind, she was already his fiancé. That possibility made Lilian feel as if her chest was uncomfortably filled to the brim. Most annoying of all, she had no explanation for this discomfort. "You can't come in, Ms. Yanes." Lauren's words were interrupted by a low cry of pain. "Ah." Lilian knitted her eyebrows and said, "Go to hell." The moment the door opened, her hands were already in the air. The person who barged in was able to react quite fast, but he still flew toward the wall, coughing up blood. Lauren stood at the door nervously and said, "I'm sorry, Ms. Yanes." Lilian waved her hand and looked at the man on the ground. "What is a panther doing barging in here?" Cough, cough. The man coughed twice and stood up, gripping his chest. He looked at Lilian and said, "Ms. Yanes, our leader hopes you will work with us to kill Kiran and—" "Idiot. How dare Simon West say such a thing to me?" Lilian shouted. The man felt an overwhelming force suffocating him, but he tried to stand up straight and said, "Miss Yanez, have you forgotten that we're all members of Imperial Dragon? Slap, slap!" The man did not even see her move, but was slapped twice. Twee! The man spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood and several teeth. "I don't need you to teach me a lesson. Get out of here," Lilian shouted at the man. He opened his mouth to speak, but bit his tongue and left. The man was frightened. He was worried that she would kill him if he uttered another word. "Lauren, if the people from Panthergate come back here, tell them that they will be dead before they get to the 2nd floor." Lilian's voice was frigid. "Ms. Yanez, are you sure? Aren't they all from Imperial Dragon?" Lauren was afraid Lilian was not in her right mind after being angered, so she reminded her. "There are many people in Imperial Dragon, but who helped our master when she was in trouble?" Lauren fell silent at her question. "Apart from the Grand Master, anyone else in Imperial Dragon is not worth our concern. Their lives have nothing to do with us," Lilian emphasized. "Yes, Ms. Yanez," Lauren agreed and walked out. Lilian put her hand on the table. "If not for Kiran trying to protect Snow, why would I?" She was frustrated. Unknowingly, she began distancing herself from Imperial Dragon because of Kiran. She knew the Panthergate people would be back. Snow would be in trouble if they saw her, so this was the only way. The man chased out of Neptune's Cove had returned to Bayville Family Hotel. When he entered, the receptionist was shocked to see his face covered in blood. However, the receptionist was too frightened to speak when she saw other men supporting him. The man was brought to room number 666. In the room, a tall, burly man sat on the sofa, sipping red wine. 2 charming women were kneeling on the ground next to him, massaging his legs. That man was the leader of Panthergate, Simon West. "Mr. West, Finn is back, but he's injured," someone came in to report. "Injured?" Simon's tone was cold. His eyebrows flew upward as he said, "Let him in." "Yes, sir." Finn Lachlan was brought in immediately. "Mr. West, Lilian beat me up badly." Finn started complaining when he saw Simon. "How dare that bitch beat up my people?" Simon tilted his head back and downed the red wine before throwing the wineglass to the ground, shattering it. Finn and the others were so frightened that they dared not speak. "Someone investigate Lilian's relationship with Kiran," Simon ordered. "Yes, sir." Someone immediately agreed and went to get it done. "Find out where Kiran is. I'm going to kill him," said Simon sinisterly. "Yes, sir," another responded. Simon pulled the women by their hair and threw them on the ground. "Fuck off." The women were trembling in fright and ran away, afraid to even let out a scream. Finn was trembling too, wondering what his fate would be. "Go back and recover. I'll help you get revenge." Simon treated his men well. "Thank you, Mr. West." Finn thanked him repeatedly and turned around to leave. Simon's eyes narrowed. "Lilian, I hope you're not foolish enough to fall in love with Kiran like your mother did, or you'll regret it." Simon's eyes were cold. "Regulus, may you rest in peace and give me your blessing to avenge you." "Kiran, your death has come," Simon said with a deadly aura. Kiran was not aware that the people from Panthergate were here, nor did he know they were planning to kill him to avenge Regulus. Although Lilian looked down on Panthergate, she was still from Imperial Dragon. She did not tell Kiran they were here so she could teach him a lesson. Of course, she was confident that Kiran could kill Simon and his men. An hour later, the Simon's people came back excitedly and shouted, "Mr. West, we have 3 good news." Chapter 345. Simon looked joyful. He looked at his men who had just returned. "What's the good news? Tell me now." His people replied, "Firstly, the battle between Kiran and Lilian did not happen last night, but Kiran went to Lilian's room instead. This morning, Kiran went to Neptune's Cove again. Damn it. That whore," Simon cursed. "Secondly, there are forces in Bayville who want to go against Kiran. They're planning to steal the books from Schuyler Library and Bayville University, and they'll do it tonight." "Really? Who are they?" Simon was surprised, and his curiosity was piqued. "I don't know the details, but it seems like they're related to the Simmons family," said the person who found out this information. "Not bad. What's the third news?" Simon was becoming even more interested and looking forward to the third news. "Thirdly, Kiran is going to Dragonsmount with Zachary in 3 days." Simon's eyes lit up. "Where did you get such information?" "This is what I overheard from the conversation between Zachary's son and daughter-in-law. They seemed worried and nervous about Kiran following him this time." Simon smirked sinisterly. "Kiran killed Hansa Power Hub Investment Group. They must want to kill him. The connections behind the Simmons family are most likely from Power Hub. It would make sense if they were the ones stealing the books from Schuyler Library. They want to kill Kiran to prevent him from going to Dragonsmount. I'm certain of it." Simon's guesses were detailed and accurate. He had it all figured out. His subordinates looked at him, waiting for him to continue. Simon calmed down. From now on, you will stay hidden and monitor Lilian to see if she betrays us. Yes, sir. Simon shooed them out. He walked to the window and said, Kiran, I'm afraid that you'll be dead before I even have the chance to make a move. I bet you don't know I'm lurking in the shadows. Ha ha ha. Simon laughed heartily, thinking that his plan was ingenious. He planned to wait for them to attack Kiran before picking up the leftovers. It would be best to reap the benefits without having to take matters into his own hands. Meanwhile, Wendell and the others had no idea. He called Zachary. Although he was disappointed in him, he was still hopeful that he would be able to find out more from Kiran. Zachary dared not lie, so he told him Kiran was going to Dragonsmount. Wendell was happy to hear that. He had already planned to dump all of the secret records of Dragonsmount near the entrance of Dragonsmount. Kiran would naturally want to pick them up, and once he died mysteriously like everyone else, his plan would succeed. Wendell's plan was as good as secured. He looked at his men and said, There are 2 steps we have to do now. What are your orders, Mr. Lopez? Everyone said with gusto. First, we will steal the books and place them in Dragonsmount next to the skeletons of the dead. Then, we will do some long-range shooting. Wendell knew that he was no match for Kiran, so he planned to kill him with a gun. His men were relieved to hear they did not have to engage Kiran in close combat. Even the mighty Gregory got killed. If they went against Kiran, they would be throwing straws against the wind. They would be scared out of their wits if they had to fight him, so they were relieved they could shoot him from a distance. Everyone was excitedly coming up with plans. They even thought of using a sniper. They planned to steal the books and shoot Kiran. Kiran and Snow practiced the harp until late at night. Snow could no longer feel her hands. Kiran gave her a good massage before she regained feeling in her hands. Why don't we stop practicing? Kiran said, distressed when he saw Snow's pained expression. No, I must practice. I'll play as far as you did. I must do it with you. Snow was persistent and determined. Kiran did not say anything to stop her. Are you afraid my practice will affect your relationship with Lilian? Snow asked in a gossipy tone. Kiran glared at her and smirked. Nonsense. Do you want me to give you all my savings? Savings? Snow's face turned cold and she asked angrily. Do you have savings? Where did you get the money? Do you have a secret stash? Kiran smiled even wider, looking at her face. He touched her nose and said, It's my long-term savings. How long? Snow asked curiously. More than 20 years. Kiran's lips curled up into an evil smile. How is that possible? You're only... Snow realized what he meant halfway through her words and said, Go to hell. You stupid bastard. I'm going to beat you up, pervert. Aha. Kiran laughed and held her hand. Don't laugh. Snow's face reddened. Honey, that's not right, Kiran said thoughtfully. What's not right? Why don't you want my secret stash? Kiran asked smilingly. Stop talking. Snow's face was burning hot. She did not know what she was going to do with him. Don't worry. My money is all yours, honey, Kiran said meaningfully. Go away. I don't want it. Snow pretended to be annoyed. You don't? I might as well keep a secret stash for real then, Kiran teased. You drive me crazy. Snow was filled with anger. Ha ha. Kiran laughed and held Snow's fair hands. He caressed her smooth, slender, and sexy legs wrapped in black stockings. Snow bit her lips to prevent herself from screaming. It was too late for her to hate Kiran now. Instead, she held Kiran's hand tightly with both her hands. Her face was full of panic, afraid that he would do something naughty again. The temperature between the two began to rise. Creak. Just then, the door opened, and Serena's perfume wafted into the room. She ran to Kiran without a moment of hesitation and grabbed his hand. Let's go. Chapter 346. Kiran was so taken aback that he grabbed Serena's hand. His grip was so strong that Serena staggered a little, but she did not take the opportunity to throw herself into his arms like usual. Instead, she said anxiously, Hurry up, it's an emergency. What is it? Kiran asked. Someone is stealing the secret records of Dragonsmount in Skylar Library, Serena said. Did you find out with the tracking spell? Kiran asked hurriedly. Serena nodded. It seems like many people are stealing them at the same time. Kiran calmed down and pulled Serena over. After getting it off her chest, she purposely threw herself into Kiran's arms when she saw him pulling her closer so she could feel him up. Kiran was already prepared to avoid her, so he threw her onto the sofa instead. Ouch! Her forehead slammed against the sofa cushion, and she screamed, Damn you, Kiran! Are you trying to kill your wife? Honey, am I trying to kill you? Kiran asked Snow. Pfft! Snow laughed and hugged Serena. Don't fight him. You'll only get angrier. Titsk! Go ahead and act all lovey-dovey, Serena scolded Kiran bitterly. It's good that you know we, husband and wife, love each other, Kiran reminded her smugly. You... Serena was furious at his teasing. Kiran was already dialing Marshall's number. Marshall picked up right after it rang. Mr. Kiran, are people from Power Hub stealing the secret records of Dragonsmount? Kiran went straight to the point. Marshall was stunned. He said quickly, They planned this yesterday, but they left out of fear after you came yesterday, so I wasn't sure if they were going to do it. If something like this happens again, tell me in advance, Kiran said coldly. Marshall was so frightened he almost dropped his phone. Yes, sir. Find out where they're taking it to. Kiran finished speaking and hung up. He could easily find out because of the tracking spell, but he just wanted to make Marshall suffer as a punishment. Marshall was wailing inwardly. He was caught in the middle and could not offend either party. He had no choice but to find a way to investigate. Kiran looked at Serena and said, The people from Power Hub stole them. Why are they stealing the secret records of Dragonsmount? Snow looked confused. Perhaps they're using it as bait. Serena looked at Kiran and expressed her thoughts. Kiran let out an evil smile. Who cares what they're stealing them for? Now, we just need to report the matter and let the police handle it. Police? Serena was puzzled. The secret records of Dragonsmount belongs to Skylar Library. It has nothing to do with us, Kiran said casually. Serena thought about it and realized what he said was true, but she was unwilling to accept it. Are we just going to let those bastards steal things all they want? Kiran smiled. Isn't that a good idea? He leaned closer to Serena's ear and said, You can now provide the police with the address of where they're taking the secret records of Dragonsmount to and let the police arrest them. Serena's beautiful eyes lit up. She was amazed at Kiran's intelligence. She turned to face him, hoping that Kiran would kiss her. However, Kiran had already turned, so she failed. She looked at him angrily. She clenched her fists and said with a warning look, Just you wait! Go! Remember that it has nothing to do with us, Kiran reminded with a smile. Fine, Serena drawled and looked at Snow. You've got Kiran completely hooked. Bitch, what are you talking about? Snow blushed and cursed at her. My wife is charming indeed, Kiran teased too. Serena pouted. I may not be as beautiful as Snow, but I'm definitely more experienced in bed. Would you like to try? Snow held back a smile and looked at Kiran. She wanted to see his reaction to her best friend's seduction. I'm not interested. Kiran hugged Snow's waist and said, Honey, let's go to bed. Snow was embarrassed. She wanted to break away, but Kiran had already picked her up and walked toward the bedroom. Serena stamped her feet and left angrily. Snow put her hands around Kiran's neck and laughed. You're so bad for bullying her. How could you say that? I'm just trying to cut her losses. What losses? Love. I will never love her, so I'm letting her know so she won't waste her love on me. Serena has sacrificed a lot for you and me. I know, but don't you want all my savings? Fuck you, I don't want it. I'll give it to you, I don't mind. Kiran smiled naughtily. I can't. Snow's face was red, but she was pleased. There are other ways. Kiran lowered his head to kiss her on the lips. Snow immediately turned to avoid him, shouting, You scoundrel! Why am I a scoundrel? Kiran carried her into the shower. When Kiran came out of the shower, Snow had not showered yet, but she was gargling and washing her face in front of the mirror. Parts of her hair were wet too. Kiran watched her with a smile on his face. Asshole! How could you be so rough? Snow said angrily. I don't have any experience either. Kiran looked distressed. You. Snow angrily hit Kiran, but he caught her hand and picked her up. This time, he actually carried her into bed. Snow did not expect Kiran to be this naughty. She blamed herself for trying to seduce Kiran. Kiran went to bed and hugged Snow to sleep. He did not think much about the theft of the secret records of Dragonsmount at all. Serena had already found a way to notify Bayville University. They immediately called the police, who started chasing them down. Wendell and the others were dejected. According to the plan, they had to transport the books twice, but they were caught during the first round, so they had no choice but to do it in a hurry. The police lost track of them. Wendell had fled into the mountains so they could not find them. The police were not eager to chase after them since all they stole were books anyway. Meanwhile, Simon heard they only managed to steal half the books, so he immediately sent people to steal the other half. The university took the matter seriously after discovering the theft, so they monitored the area, but it was useless. The other half still got stolen by Simon. Just like that, the secret records of Dragonsmount was gone. The policemen were confused. How did it end up like this? Serena did not tell Kiran as he was fast asleep. The next day, Snow continued playing the harp for the entire day. Since Kiran was going to Dragonsmount the next day, he wanted to experience the wonderful time he had last night all over again, but Snow refused. Kiran had no choice but to put her to bed and went downstairs to look for Serena. Chapter 347. When Kiran got to her door, Serena opened it as if expecting him. "How'd you know I was coming?" Kiran asked with a smile. Serena rolled her eyes at him. "I thought you were so busy with Aphrodite that you forgot about work. Am I really that bad?" "Snow does have the potential to be Aphrodite, though," Kiran said with a smile. "I didn't think you'd ask the inexperienced Snow to do it for you," Serena pouted and said. "How do you know what we did?" Kiran asked quickly, worried that she had installed cameras in his house. "Relax, I'm not that perverted. I only found out after Snow asked me for advice." Serena's cheeks were flushed as she peeked at Kiran. "It seems like you have a lot of experience," Kiran said in surprise as his eyes widened. "Go to..." Serena did not have any experience. She did not mean to sound like a whore. She was just seducing Kiran, but his words angered her. On the other hand, Kiran acted like he was serious. He retreated and stared at Serena. "I'm not here for that." "Shut up." Serena wanted to kill the man. He was an absolute animal. Not only did he reject her love, but he even called her a slut. Kiran was laughing. He finally made her angry. He blinked and said, "What's going with the secret records of Dragonsmount?" "Everything got stolen, but it was stolen by two separate parties," Serena said with a frown as she turned serious. "Two parties?" Kiran asked. Serena nodded. "One took them to Dragonsmount, while the other took them to Bayville Family Hotel. I didn't report the ones who took them to the hotel." Kiran nodded. "Good." "Why?" Serena was stunned. "I would rather go after the people from Power Hub. I suspect the people in the hotel to be from Imperial Dragon." "Imperial Dragon? Are you going to kill them?" Serena asked. Kiran shook his head. "I'm going to Dragonsmount tomorrow. If I kill them, more powerful people will come. Then, it'll be difficult for Lilian to protect Snow." "Who's Lilian?" Serena asked. In the next second, her eyes widened. "Is she the woman who stole Neptune's Cove?" Kiran nodded. "That's her, all right. Are you really having an affair with her?" She liked Kiran so much that she almost died after going there to warn her to stay away from him. She did not expect him to hook up with her. "What are you thinking about?" "I have nothing to do with her. Nothing is going on between us." Kiran glared at her. "Why should I believe you?" Serena was secretly relieved, but she still pretended to be skeptical. "Believe it or not, it's up to you. I'll go to Bayville Family Hotel to poison them, so I'll pack my things after I come back," Kiran said calmly. Serena sighed in relief. Kiran walked toward the door and stopped in his tracks to look at Serena. "What makes you think that something is going on between Lilian and me?" "You're so horny all the time," Serena said, pretending to be mad. "If I liked other women, Snow's hands and mouth wouldn't be so sore from yesterday." After saying that, Kiran left the room. Serena realized he was telling her he did not like her, so she swung her fists at where he was standing and cursed. "Pervert! I'm not a pervert." Kiran suddenly responded. "If you're not a pervert, come sleep with me," Serena growled provocatively. "I'm not interested." Kiran laughed and walked away. "You..." Serena was so mad she almost coughed up blood. Kiran went downstairs and rushed to Bayville Family Hotel. Before leaving for Dragonsmount, he planned to take care of the people from Imperial Dragon so he could focus on killing the people from Power Hub. At Bayville Family Hotel, Simon was lying on the sofa while two women massaged him. Chapter 348. Feeling the sensations of pleasure coursing through his body, he realized how beautiful life was. It was every man's dream to conquer the world in the day and sleep next to beautiful women at night. Simon felt like he had peaked in life. On the other hand, the other people in Panthergate were not having as great of a time as he was. They all took turns guarding the stolen books. When Kiran arrived, the receptionist immediately said, "Sir, someone has booked the entire hotel. If you need a room, please go to another hotel." When Kiran heard that, he was surprised. He smiled and said, "What a bold move." The female receptionist was mesmerized by Kiran's good looks. "They're not nearly as good-mannered as you, sir. How about I go in and take a look?" As soon as Kiran said that, he took hold of the receptionist's hand to feel her pulse. "Your heart isn't in good condition. You need to get treatment." The woman's face turned red and her heart began beating violently. She was indeed sick, so she asked in trepidation, "What should I do?" "I'm a doctor, so I can help you," Kiran said, taking out a silver needle. The receptionist was shocked. "You know acupuncture?" Kiran nodded. She readily agreed, trusting him fully. Kiran asked her to sit down, and he pretended to insert the needle a few times. Her heart soon returned to normal. "I feel better now," she said excitedly. Kiran smiled. Can I go in and take a look for a bit? The receptionist was grateful for Kiran's treatment, so she nodded. Be careful. Those people are quite rude. Kiran nodded and said graciously, Thank you. He turned to go upstairs with a smile. Any woman's heart would beat when a guy held her hand. It seemed like being handsome could come in handy sometimes. Kiran laughed at himself and shook his head. He took the elevator to the top floor, and when he got out, he saw people standing in the corridor. Cough, cough. Kiran coughed lightly, and the people immediately looked at him. Who are you? They shouted. Kiran was already walking toward them. He simply lifted his hands and spread a colorless and odorless powder in the air. It was weakening powder. It was a medicinal powder that could weaken one's strength, and it was untraceable. The people from Panthergate chased after him, but Kiran disappeared like a ghost. The people on the top floor shouted, alerting the people on the other floors to chase after him. In the end, Kiran poisoned all of them as they inhaled the weakening powder along the way. Kiran went downstairs, and when the receptionist saw him, her eyes were filled with joy. Just as she was about to speak, Kiran put a finger to his lips and disappeared. A group of men chased after him. The female receptionist was so scared that she immediately sat down. Someone looked at the receptionist and asked, Did you see a man pass by here? The receptionist would not betray Kiran. She shook her head and said, No! Aren't you guys the only ones here? Everyone was confused. It was like they had just seen a ghost. They wanted to check the surveillance, but then they remembered that they had turned it off for fear of being monitored. In the end, they could only report back to Simon, who scolded them for being so blind. They held back their anger and got back to work. By now, the air in the building was filled with weakening powder. They were inhaling it the entire time, unaware that they were being poisoned. Kiran left the hotel and went back to hug Snow to sleep. The next day, Kiran called Frank and Yvonne, asking them to follow Zachary. Then he took Snow to Lilian at Neptune's Cove. Chapter 349. Snow was like a kid being sent to kindergarten by her parents for the first time. She was reluctant and nervous. She sat in the car with teary eyes. Kiran smiled and said, Honey, you can't bear being away from me for even a second, can you? Snow nodded and said unexpectedly, I want to go with you. Kiran felt bad. He grabbed her hand and said, The situation in Dragonsmount is complicated. I can't take care of you there. Isn't Yvonne going too? Why can't I? Snow asked angrily. She's different. She's been there before and is familiar with the place. If you were asked to travel to an unfamiliar country, you would have so many questions and worries. It's the same with Dragonsmount. It's a barren mountain, Kiran comforted her. You must come back safely. If you don't, I'll kill myself, Snow said resolutely. Theft, Kiran laughed. You love me so much that you'd die for me. Damn you. Snow lifted her hands to beat him. Kiran grabbed her hands. Don't worry. Why would I put my life at risk when I haven't slept with you yet? Pervert. Just because you want to sleep with me, Snow said flirtatiously. If not you, am I supposed to sleep with other women? Kiran teased and winked. You. Snow was about to lash out at him, but Kiran had already parked his car at Neptune's Cove. Neptune's Cove was open today, and Lauren was standing by the door. She knew that Kiran was coming, so she stood outside, waiting for him. Kiran got out of the car and took the luggage containing Snow's clothes. He walked toward the entrance of Neptune's Cove. Lauren looked at them coldly, which made Snow feel awkward. Kiran did not say a word. He took her hand and walked into Neptune's Cove karaoke, ignoring Lauren. Without saying a word, Lauren followed behind them. Lilian stood by the window and watched Kiran holding Snow's hand. The joy on his face and his gentleness toward Snow made her feel jealous. Kiran and Snow were so affectionate that any woman would be envious of their relationship, especially the way Snow depended on him. It seemed like she really liked him. Knock, knock, knock. There was a knock on her door. Come in, Lilian shouted toward the door. Kiran opened the door and walked in with Snow. Snow and Lilian met each other's gaze. It was the first time they were seeing each other, and each was shocked by the other's beauty. Beauty recognized beauty indeed. Lilian's ethereal beauty was otherworldly, while Snow exuded the beauty of a strong and prideful woman. Standing together, the women were like two flowers in full bloom, competing with each other and complementing each other at the same time. Kiran walked over and put away Snow's luggage. He looked at Lilian and said, Thank you, I appreciate it. Lilian was quiet. Snow was shy, but since it was dangerous for her to go to Dragonsmount, she did not want Kiran to worry about her. So she took the initiative to greet Lilian. Hello! Lilian did not want to seem impolite in front of Snow, so she nodded and said, You can stay here for the time being. Thank you, Snow said gratefully. Kiran was a little confused. Lilian had always been cold to him, but the both of them seemed quite friendly. She was afraid that Snow would be lonely, so he said, "Honey, if you want to practice the harp, just ask Lilian. She knows it better than I do." Snow looked at the harp by the window. She did not say anything, but she seemed interested. Lilian shot Kiran a look of annoyance. Kiran did not care. "People from the Imperial Dragon came. They're staying at the Bayville Family Hotel, so I paid them a visit yesterday." "Did you kill them?" Lilian knew that he was referring to Simon and the others, so she asked anxiously. "I'm not that violent." Kiran smiled. Lilian sighed with relief and snorted. "It's strange to see you not resort to violence." Kiran did not argue with Lilian about that. He said, "If they come for Snow and cause you trouble, just say that you're doing it to save them." "Save them?" Lilian was intrigued. "I poisoned them, so they've practically become useless," Kiran said with a smile. "You poisoned them?" Lilian exclaimed. "Don't worry. It's a subtle poison that will gradually worsen. Before they know it, they will no longer be able to contact Imperial Dragon. They'll just be lying there, unable to move." Kiran responded calmly. Lilian was at a loss for words. "I'm just trying to keep Snow safe." Kiran paused before continuing. "I also don't want you to get into trouble for helping me." "Is that all? If you have nothing else to say, then leave." Lilian could not look at him anymore. The shock was too much for her to handle. "Honey, I'm leaving," Kiran shouted affectionately. He shouted in Lilian's direction to tease her. She trembled and subconsciously turned to look at him. In the end, she was blinded by their display of affection. Kiran and Snow were hugging. Snow even kissed him first. Ignoring her presence, they started kissing. "Get out!" Lilian shouted and swung her hand toward Kiran. Kiran was provoking her on purpose, but he stopped when he saw that she was angry. He quickly dodged and caught her hand. Then he left the room and said, "See you soon." Lilian wanted to curse at him, but she held herself back. Snow ran to the door, wanting to follow him. "Stop!" Lilian shouted. Snow immediately stopped in her tracks and looked at Lilian. Lilian's cold face warmed up when she looked at Snow. She said in a deep voice, "You have to stay here so I can keep you safe." Snow did not know what she meant, but she nodded anyway. "From now on, you will eat, breathe, and go everywhere with me. You must be always within my sight." Snow felt a little uncomfortable being watched, but she nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. When Kiran comes back, I'll kill him," Lilian said coldly. "Why are you so kind to women but so cruel to me? Do you like girls?" Kiran suddenly turned around and asked. Lilian froze. "Since you're so nice to my wife, are you killing me to steal her from me?" "Ha ha." Kiran left while laughing. "Damn you!" Lilian shouted and ran after him, but he was gone. Snow ran to the window and saw that Kiran was already outside of the building. He turned to look upstairs and blew her a kiss. Snow blew him a kiss back. Lilian's eyes were assaulted by their display of affection once again. Kiran was already on his way to Dragonsmount. It was the beginning of the end for Power Hub Investment Group. Chapter 350. Kiran arrived at the foot of Dragonsmount. He stopped the car and walked up the mountain. It was a sunny day. Dragonsmount was covered with dense forests and birds were chirping, creating a relaxing sense of tranquility. Kiran looked far into Dragonsmount and smiled. The tracking spell and his medicinal powder allowed him to easily track Wendell and the others, so killing them was a piece of cake. Kiran smiled and walked toward the northeast part of the mountain. Meanwhile, Wendell was sitting on the ground, nearly 10 meters away from the cave where the research was done. 4 people were next to him, all his strongest men. "Mr. Lopez, everyone is prepared for the ambush. We have 10 snipers in hiding and more than 20 of us. Even if Kiran isn't killed on his way here, we'll beat him to death," one of his men reported. "I like your plan," Wendell said. He ordered one of his men, "Shane, throw a pack of explosives into the pile of books. If we don't kill him, we'll blow him up." "Yes, sir." Shane Webster agreed. Wendell was going all out to kill Kiran. Kiran must die. Then his phone rang. It was Zachary. Wendell smiled and said, "It seems like Kiran and Zachary are about to depart. They'll be approaching their death soon. Ha ha." While laughing, he answered the call and said, "Zachary, how are things going?" "Kiran isn't coming with me. He asked Yvonne and another man to accompany me. Kiran is nowhere to be found." "Kiran isn't here?" Wendell stood up in shock. "Is he disguised as the man?" "No. The man is at least 10 centimeters shorter than Kiran," Zachary said affirmatively. Wendell was in serious contemplation as things were not going as planned. "Never mind. Just come as usual." Wendell hung up. He was silent for a moment before saying, "There's been a change of plans." "What is it?" Shane asked. "Shane, you will take half of the people back to Bayville and kidnap Kiran's wife, Snow." Bring her back and let's see what Kiran will do then. Yes, sir. Shane looked excited as he led a dozen people out of the forest. Wendell looked around cautiously. Let's go to the back of Dragonsmount and clear the place. Once Snow shows up, she'll be tossed with the pile of books. When Kiran comes to save her, we'll send them to hell together. After the arrangements were made, he immediately took the remaining people toward the back of the mountain. Meanwhile, Shane and the others were hurrying down the mountain. Their disorderly footsteps alarmed the birds and the animals, creating a commotion and distracting the hidden snipers. Kiran was already under the tree, looking up at the sniper leaning in the middle of 3 branches. He was holding a sniper rifle, facing downward, and waiting for his arrival. However, their footsteps made him turn away, so he failed to notice Kiran below. Kiran shot the silver needle from his hand, and it pierced the man's throat. The sniper wanted to shout, but no sound came out. He covered his throat with both hands. After a struggle, he died on the spot. However, he got stuck between the branches and did not fall to the ground. Kiran had already ducked under another mound of dirt. A sniper lying next to the mound did not hear him coming until he was right next to him. He quickly turned his gun, but Kiran had already landed his foot on his mouth, forcefully silencing him and crushing his skull. Before dying, he pulled the trigger and let off a shot with a loud bang. Among the men descending the mountain with Shane, one unlucky guy lifted his foot to cross a branch and got shot in the balls. "Ah!" the unlucky guy shouted and fell to the ground. Instantly, the entire mountain was on high alert. The birds were frightened by the screams, so they flew away. The entire mountain was in chaos. Shane and the others looked around to find the source of the gunfire. Finally, they looked in the direction of the shooting and said, "Why did you shoot one of your own?" Kiran smirked. He picked up the sniper rifle on the ground and pointed at another sniper, who was looking around, and bang, he pulled the trigger. The sniper reacted quickly when he heard the trigger being pulled, but as he was about to face Kiran, he only managed to turn halfway before his head exploded. Before he died, he instinctively pulled the trigger. The unlucky guy who fell to the ground was screaming with his mouth open, and the bullet shot him right in the back of his throat, killing him on the spot. Gasp! Shane and the others inhaled cold air and looked around vigilantly. Wendell was shocked to hear gunfire and rushed toward his men. Seeing the unlucky guy on the ground who died tragically, he got chills down his spine. What happened? Shane looked confused and angry. "I don't know, we're killing each other." Wendell was still calm when he realized that something was off. "Get the other snipers down quickly." "Kiran is here." "Kiran is here?" everyone exclaimed in fear. "Why are we still going down then?" Shane asked. "We're going down so we can escape," Wendell said as he led the people to retreat. He knew it would be easier for Kiran to kill them in the open. Shane shouted toward the mountain, "Come down and follow us." 7 figures instantly emerged from among the trees and the bushes, joining Shane and the others. Kiran saw them moving and sneered. "You rascals! Now, it was time. Hurry up and follow Mr. Lopez," Shane told the 7 snipers. They did not let their guard down as they ran. They looked around as if they were afraid of Kiran attacking. Shane felt relieved. Seeing Wendell running fast, he started to run fast too. Kiran was not in a rush to catch up. Instead, he wanted to see where they would run to. They retreated closer and closer to the pile of bones outside the cave. Kiran saw the pile of bones and wanted to take a picture as he was reminded of the pictures in the research. This seemed like a good place to bury skeletons. "There's no need to run." Kiran's mocking voice sounded like the voice of the Grim Reaper echoing in everyone's ears. Everyone immediately stopped, as if they were frozen solid.